A very good evening and a warm welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us. We're coming to you from the Kampala Serena Conference Center, the NTV Uganda studios. And tonight we'll be speaking about knowing your learner. During this COVID-19 pandemic, many parents, many caregivers have been pushed into the role of teacher, but you're teaching somebody that you might not know how to educate, meeting them where they are. But also when they're back in school, when schools open, and even before the COVID-19 pandemic, were we giving special attention to children as individuals with how they were as individuals? Well, I'm joined in the studio by two guests, Annette Birawa, who is a clinical psychologist, Education Assessment Coordinator at Children at Risk Action Network, CRANE. Annette, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, and I'm also joined by Eid Mubarak Musimami, who is an Inclusive Education Officer, Directorate of Education and Social Services at the Kampala Capital City Authority. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Musimami.
Thank you too.
Okay, so we're going to get into our conversation. I want us to start with the definition of children with special needs. When we say children with special needs, who are we talking about?
Children with special needs, first of all, there are two things. We have special needs, and then we have the children. So special needs means any difficulties that a child will find during learning. So anything that can hinder one's normal learning is a special need. So we have children who have got different challenges that could be either disability or a health condition or some situation of the sort.
Do we only look at the health angle?
No.
Are there others that go beyond and we have to cater for them in a school setting?
Yes, like I said, there are disabilities, like there are some issues even at home.
Correct.
Domestic violence can cause a special need to the learner. Because the child saw the mother being beaten last night, this child will not learn. So we need to understand our children, our learners, study them. There are people who walk very long distances.
Yes.
Because the parent is interested in a particular school X, regardless of the distance, and the child gets late to school every day.
Maybe that's the only school in the village. So I just wanted to be clear, yes, that special needs does not only apply to a disability or another underlying health condition, but it can also apply to
other conditions.
Yes,
yes,
not coming with a reason,
yes,
mental health challenges and so on.
Definitely.
Yes, so are these things we are thinking about in schools? Because we get caned for coming late and no one is asking us why. You know, if you can't write well enough, you're taking a bit more time than everybody else to catch up. There's nobody understanding that and coming to your pace to help you understand at your own level. What are we doing about that?
There we come in to support. One, we do the assessment. And then after understanding the challenges the child is going through, we talk to the teachers, we advise them.
So who is doing the assessment? You as KCCA?
KCCA partners with some other partners. We have so many partners. And this regard with assessment, we partner with Children at Risk Action Network. In a brief, it is called CRANE.
That's a nice way to introduce Annette into the yes, conversation. Annette, tell me about Children at Risk Action Network.
Children at Risk Action Network is an NGO that works with children, all kinds of children. We are inclusive, and we focus more children in education, children in families, and basically we focus more on education, safeguarding. So it's a network with different other organizations that work together to make sure children achieve their God-given potential.
Okay, so how does your role come into education?
Education.
And you said you work with any children. So where do the children come from, the ones that are under the network?
So the network is inclusive. The children come from central Uganda, mostly Kampala, Wakiso, Mukono. Crane in education, working with KCCA, they refurbed the Inclusive Education Assessment Center that used to be the former EARS. The former EARS basically, the former years was for assessment and for rehabilitation. So they worked with KCCA to refurbish it. So the assessment center, it's down in Nachivuo Primary School. It does comprehensive assessment. It does physio assessment. It does audio assessment, psychometric assessment, psychoeducation assessment. But then it also, apart from assessment, also does rehabilitation and psychotherapy.
So give me an example. A child, I'm a parent, I'm listening to you speaking right now, and I'm thinking, okay, what exactly do they do with children? Where do I take my children to access this? And when I take my child there, what happens? So a child comes to you, then? So usually, the children that come are brought in probably by their caregiver, churches, or school. So by the time they come, the person has identified like a red flag, and they're trying to see, okay, is my child progressing very well? Are they developing very well? So for you to want to know more about that child or that learner, you need to do an assessment. In a clinic setting, when you go and you feel like a child is sick, you go to a pediatrician and they'll do blood slides, they'll do temperature, they'll do a different range of assessment. Here in the assessment, they do when you come, we'll do an initial assessment, then the different assessments we'll do depending on on the child's presenting problem. Okay, so I bring my child and I say, my child, I think they're not going as fast as their friends in terms of being able to understand things, and I want to understand if there's a problem here or if there's a name to it or how I can support them. Then you advise, right?
So what we usually do, because basically you're going to come with, you're saying the child has problem with concentration, because usually there are some times where there are other conditions that might actually affect the child to concentrate. So we usually do a comprehensive assessment. We do cognitive assessment. We do academic achievement assessment. Then if it's attention, maybe probably the child is not hearing very well, so that's why his attention is everywhere. Then we also do audio assessment. So we do all different differentials depending on the problems you bring, then we assess. So after knowing probably this child has these limitations or these weaknesses and probably also their strength, then we find out ways of how to help this child. And we help this child through formulating an individualized education plan. Individualized education plan, we set targets. So we can say probably this child has a challenge in concentration. So we set targets. How do we help this child concentrate depending on the child's need? Because at the end of it all, it's focusing, it's child-centered. Yeah. What are the child's needs? What are this child's abilities? What should we focus on as per how the child is? Then we set targets. But then also after setting targets, you also have to put the accommodations. Because we don't want the child to just go to a school and just pass through school and they're not actually learning. So we focus more on meaningful education benefits for all children, not just those children who are going to learn better through the teacher talking and then this person understands. Other children learn differently.
Okay, I'm very curious about, there's always the fear that a child comes to a center or goes into a school and they get bundled up with so many other children and you have a teacher-child ratio that is extreme. So how, for example, how many children are you able to accommodate at the center at a time? And also for KCCA, how many children can you at any one point accommodate? And do we have enough people to attend to them?
What you need to know, the center is not a school.
Okay.
The center is an assessment center, like how if you went to, let me say, Butavika or Mulago and you need to do a psychometric assessment, or you go there for rehabilitation. So that's the setting of a center. It's set in a way that we have different clinic days. People come we have different clinic days. So children who have probably issues with physio, or occupational issues like adaptive scaling, then they'll come on a particular day to see a physiotherapist or an occupational therapist. Children with sensory issues will come on a specific day
So it's not a one-on-one, it's really going to be children with the same issue together being attended to?
Not really. It's usually, children come, usually their main presenting problem is what we focus on when we give appointments. So if a child, probably the mother thinks the child is floppy, they can't sit well, they can't feed themselves, then that's physio or occupational. So that child is given an appointment to see a physiotherapist and occupational therapist.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Thank you so much. And then on the very issue, like, we don't allow so many children on the same day.
Okay.
So she gives you an appointment depending on our program. On Monday we have a clinical psychologist who will do issues of cognitive assessment and all those. And then we have a physiotherapist. So we must put have a limited number that this person will handle at a time, and we handle a child at a time. We cannot handle all of. Sorry, the word handling is not positive in special needs, but you cannot support all the children at the same time. So we look at them individually. Now, she mentioned something to do with assessment and then years. I just want to elaborate years now, because somebody could think the
yeah, when she said it, I thought, huh?
The years of the person. Years was a program under the Ministry of Education that started in 1998, and it was education assessment and resource services. And we had over 45 districts in Uganda that had these years centers, including Kampala. But now this program was under DANIDA, was being funded by DANIDA for 10 years. So when the project ended, government of Uganda decided that these years centers are taken over by the districts, the respective districts. So ours at Nachivubo was taken over by KCC then. But then I want to think they did not have enough funding for some reasons. So the years centers closed countrywide. Now with our engagement, the engagement of KCCA and Crane led to renovating and re-equipping our assessment center. And for now, as I talk now, today, it is only the assessment center at Nachivubo that is functional in the whole country. That
was my biggest worry, and I didn't even want you to say it, because just one center in Kampala serving, so really you're limited with who you can serve. So what happens up country? But let's take a short break and we'll be right back. Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. Tonight we're speaking about knowing your learner, and I have in the studio Annette Birawa, who is a clinical psychologist, and Eid Mubarak Musimami, who is an inclusive education officer at KCCA. And Mr. Musimami, you were speaking about this Kampala, really, Nachivubo being the only place where we have these centers, this center actually, that's still operational. What happens to children in another district? Do they find their way here to Kampala, or what happens to them? Do you know? Yes.
One, when they make, because some people call us and seek for appointment, we welcome them, because this is not a Kampala thing alone. It is a national assessment. So we welcome them, and they make appointment with Annette. Okay. And then in some other districts, but according to the structure, every district is supposed to have an education officer in charge of special needs. Okay. So some people go to the districts and they're attended to by those officers.
I wanted us to talk about inclusive education now. So when we talk about inclusive education in regards to our conversation, children with special needs, what are we talking about?
Actually, inclusive education, like we have looked at the children with special needs, the different categories. Now when we come in to do the inclusive education, we are addressing the learner's needs in the mainstream setting using all the available resources. So, for example, if I'm deaf and I want to go to, say, Natural Primary School, which is not a special school, then I must be attended to and supported to learn just like any other student in that very environment.
I'm going to ask a question and I'd like a really honest answer. Are they actually being supported in the ordinary school?
We are trying our level best.
Okay.
However, there are definitely some gaps here and there. For example, in Kampala, in partnership with the main organizations, including CRANE, including Cheshire Services Uganda, and so many others, we have tried to work on the environment to ensure that everyone is able to access this environment. We have constructed ramps to everywhere, to the classrooms, to the offices, to the toilet facilities.
Is this in public schools?
Yes, in the public schools.
Okay.
We have constructed toilets. However, the support we offer depends on the learner's needs. If we identify tomorrow, for instance, if the schools open tomorrow and we receive 2 or 3 or 1 child who requires Braille, that is very easy. 1, we do the training of the teachers. So we train the teachers, and 2, when the teachers are trained, they're also able to train the child in Braille. So you
go to a school and train the teachers at the school?
Yes.
That's assuming that the teachers actually go back after the pandemic.
That's another issue. But for example, with our public schools, at least we are sure that our teachers will be there because 1, they are being paid a salary on a monthly basis, and they are ready to work.
Do we have, and I know you've been really dying to say something, but do we have similar support for private schools?
We do, but on request, because 1, with our public schools, this is our daily routine. We visit them on a daily basis, and we are able to identify the challenges. But with with private schools, we go there on call.
Okay.
For example, if a teacher or head teacher calls you and says, Mr. Mbaraka, I have a child here, I don't understand him. So you go there to see the challenges of the child, and then I guide them to the assessment center.
Okay.
So they go, they get assessed, and then after that assessment, the assessment report gives the intervention is what should be done. Okay. And then after that, we go back to the school and they guide the teachers.
Okay.
Yes.
Annette.
Yes, just to add on, inclusive education is broader than just special needs. It involves children who are refugees, children from low socioeconomic status. It's more on a principle that all children should go to school, all children should learn. So it's more about getting different learners and then taking them to school, but not just taking them to school, giving them the resources and accommodation so that they can have meaningful education. However, this accommodation only don't stop on physical accommodation, putting their ramps and toilets. It's more than that. It's more, he has talked about teacher training, differential teaching, multisensory teaching. It goes more than that. It's teaching the teacher to know each and every learner, okay, so that they can teach them better. When
she's talking about accommodation, which I think we should explain a little bit.
Yeah, it feels like you have a boarding section.
So when somebody hears accommodation, somebody will think of a boarding dormitories, but accommodation is the provisions we can do to support this particular learner.
Yeah.
For example, there are learners who will take time writing, even during examination. So they are given extra time. They are given special support. And at this time, when I talk about examination, kindly allow me to thank UNEB, Uganda National Examinations Board, for the support that they have always offered to our candidates during examinations. I know shall get there. Thank you.
Okay. I wanted to ask about, so because our focus today is on special needs, and you mentioned that special needs does not necessarily just mean what we are used for it to mean. It could also include a child who is dealing with mental health issues, is coming late because of the domestic violence situation at home. Are those things that we are seeing being taken into account in school? Because as far as I remember, if you came late, no excuse, nothing, on the floor, 50 strokes, or go and, I don't know, carry a bottle of something on your head for the whole day. There was no explanation required, nothing. Is this something we're actively thinking about, or when we speak about special needs, while we describe it under there, we focus more on the health challenges?
I think when you talk about special needs, of course, like what you said, children who have learning needs or who have disability. Special needs are a bit wide. There are children who come at the center and probably they have trauma or post-traumatic stress, especially the refugees, which is seen in the refugees. All that is fostered into the assessment, because as I said, the assessment is comprehensive. So
do we see teachers or parents actually coming and saying, a teacher saying, this child comes late all the time and we failed to figure that out? Or does that, who are the largest number that actually come to the center?
So the largest number of children who come at the center, usually children with intellectual disability, children who are on the spectrum, yes, and of recent, children who are depressed, especially for those who are 13 and above. With
special needs, like we said in the definition, it is any hindrance, anything that can hinder one's normal learning and involvement.
I just wanted to be sure that even these ones were covered.
All those conditions that will affect one's normal learning is a special need.
So are we training teachers to actually identify that beyond what they can see, that a child can't hear, can't see, can't talk, that there's something more that they need to identify? Surely.
And normally in our training with the teachers, we emphasize that for as long as we identify that this child is not learning normally, then there should be a problem.
Okay.
Please bring that child to our attention, and then we investigate.
Actually, the Ministry of Education, there is an identification book, a learning needs identification book that has 21 syndromes. So this identification book has different challenges that a learner should have. So I think you're trying to say, apart from the
usual ones.
The usual ones, like I can't see, I can't hear, or I have physical disability. There are those that people are terming as invisible challenges. Okay. All those ones are in that identification book. So all those ones are catered for.
What are the red flags that, now with COVID-19, I'm teaching a child at home, the people out there have kids that they're trying to teach at home. What are the red flags that we should look out for and say, because we're not your ordinary teachers, we're not going to get the training that you had planned for, we possibly don't even have those books you're talking about. So what should I look out for and say this might be a flag?
What idea, let me first focus on the young ones, those ones who are in pre-primary. What one should focus on if a child is more irritable than usual, they are crying more often.
So what age are we talking about?
3 years.
Okay.
It can actually also be from 2 to 5 years. They are more irritable than usual, they're not eating, or they're overeating, they are withdrawn, they're isolated. For the young ones, it's basically those things that one should look out for. For the old ones, of course, when you're focusing on education, they'll say, I just can't get it. They're frustrated with books. They're not learning. They come and tell you, Mommy, I'm not learning. I can't understand what they are teaching. Some need more help. Then also the old ones can be, they can be withdrawn because they don't understand what they are learning, especially for those who are learning on Zoom. And
imagine you're learning on TV. You can't ask a question. You can't say what? You please repeat that. Okay.
Yeah, I think COVID has made us think more of what more we can do about these children. So I think the teachers out there or the parents out there also the parents actually should be encouraged to be teachers, to teach their children. Apart from what they teach on TV, you can teach like normal things, like if you're cooking food and you're slicing something into, you're teaching fractions. So I think we need to do more, but then also apart from focusing on school, we need to focus about life success. We want our children to be happy, and apart from succeeding in school, we want them to be happy, to have good mental health.
There are children who are very hyperactive that will not settle.
Yes.
And you tell him, do this, he runs away, comes back. You should begin investigating what is the problem. And
attention, there are those who can't, as per age, probably they're like 10 years, their attention span is so short. So instead of sitting, you're teaching them for like 5 minutes, they're everywhere, they want to pull this, the attention is so short. Also, those are things you need to look out for.
Then we even have some children who cannot communicate. In the way we do, the verbal communication is not there, and even possibly even the sign language is not there. The person cannot even sign, and he cannot talk. And then you think, what should I do? There is what we call augmentative alternative communication, which you can use. And you put a few things, maybe in diagrams, maybe, so that the child will come and point at a cup, and then you understand maybe what's this.
It's actually called picture exchange. Yeah. Picture exchange, like those children who can't communicate, whatever you want them to communicate, you put them in pictures, and when they want to communicate to you, like if they want food, they'll show you a picture of food, yes. And then you will know they want food. If they want to use the washroom.
So we have just a few minutes for this show, so we can't teach all of those things. So a parent who is watching is probably thinking, I need more information. Where do I get that information? Where do they get the information? And where do they bring their child for assessment? There are different places you can go to. You can go to KCCA and ask for the Inclusive Education Officer. You can come to the assessment center. It's inside Natureville Primary. If these places are not near you, then you go to a hospital and see a pediatrician, so that the pediatrician will refer you appropriately to specialists who will help you better. Okay. And even in our friends in other districts, you can also you can go to the district and ask the education office. They will actually guide you. All right, thank you so much. Let's take another short break and we'll be right back. We are speaking about knowing your child this evening, and in this regard we are speaking about knowing your child in the sense of education, right? So what are we talking about? Knowing how fast they catch on, knowing what their challenges might be, and trying to find solutions to them. Is that what we are saying? Yeah, but also to add on, it's knowing how your learner learns, because some children learn by visuals, seeing things, but they learn by hearing. So know your learner, it's knowing how best does the child learn, but also it also involves like what are their challenges. What provisions or what can we do, what resources can I provide for this learner to learn best. So we had recently, yes. A moment.
in education, there is what we call child study. Every teacher needs to do child study of every learner in the class. You need to study all your learners.
How many learners do you have in the class?
Even if they have how many, but you need to understand them. This is when, because like we are saying, some children come very late, and teachers don't pay attention. But there should be a reason why this person is always coming late. Maybe briefly, there was a scenario of a child who used to come. Okay, she used to come early, and then after some time, she started coming very late. And the teacher would simply tell her, "Go down for 5." She goes down. Even tomorrow, the same day, the same thing. Even the other day, the same thing. For about a month. Now, after some time, the child started coming very early in the morning. She was always like the first in the class. And the teacher was like, "But you girl, you used to come very late. Now you have improved. You're coming very early. Give me the trick you are using these days." The girl stood up and said, "Teacher, I've been coming very late because my mother was bedridden. She had HIV/AIDS, and I'm the only person who could cater for her because my younger brother is too young and is a boy. Our father died, so I was taking care of my mom, who was bedridden. Now you see me coming early, it's because my mother died. So I have the time. I can now come, I can manage my time." Everybody started crying. Even the teacher himself cried. So you need to understand why such things are happening.
That's true.
Yes.
We just saw the UNEB results come out for primary 7 and senior 4, and we're thinking, what's next? Yeah, but to bring it to this context of children with special needs, what's next for them? I think that there are a bit more interventions for other children. People are thinking of homeschooling, others are thinking about, okay, use the TV, radio, whatever. But for a parent who is not trained to give that kind of education assistance, that extra, that they should be giving, what are they doing? What should they do?
Well, our partners, Children at Risk, have developed some materials that will be given out, I think starting next week, because the production is done, and Cheshire Services Uganda is also producing materials. After they told me next week they will be done, and they are going to distribute. Now these materials are in different formats. Like for our learners with special needs, they have materials that are audiovisual, so that they can be easily accessed. And we're also planning, I've had some discussion with a team in Chambogo University. We're also planning to produce more accessible materials. Otherwise, I want to thank the government and the media houses for the programs, for the home learning programs you give us. However, our learners with special needs have been left out very often. For example, a child who is deaf will not see, okay, he will see, but he will not understand the lesson that is going on TV or even on radio. So we want to encourage all the partners out there. Whoever is able to offer any kind of support to these children, to please do it. Not only in Kampala, but the whole country, because these children belong to the state.
What does support for the educators look like in this regard, considering our current situation now? You are a teacher teaching a child, you're a parent teaching a child at home, and your child has extra needs that you maybe were not aware of. Now that you're aware, you don't even know how to address them because you thought teaching was going to be as easy as do this homework that they've given you, or supervising, what they're learning via the online platform or wherever. What does support look like for the parents?
I think as much as most people don't want to do assessment is one of those things you can't jump. Because for you to know how to help your child, a mother or an educator, you need to know what their challenges are and how best to help them. So once you know how can you as a parent help that child, is to take the child for assessment, and then you set goals, what you really want to work on depending on the child's needs. And then after knowing the child's needs, there are people or there are teachers at the assessment center or most of the assessment centers that will teach the caregiver or the mother how to best teach the child when they're at home.
Are there toll-free lines to call for information? There's a bit of, okay, not a bit, there's a long silence. Okay, I guess that means that's a no.
But still, somebody can call our lines.
KCC,
yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
As we close this session, I want you both to give us a take-home from the conversation, what you would like a parent, a child that's watching, a teacher, a headmistress, headmaster, to take away from the conversation. What's critical for them to know? I'm going to start with you, Annette.
What I would say is all children can learn. This perception where people say a child has special needs so they can't learn. All children can learn. So education should be catered depending on the child's needs, the child's characteristics. Then the other thing I would want all caregivers or parents to know, when you take to a child to a school, there are some things you need to think about. There's some things you need to think about. Individualized education plans, which IEPs, individualized transition plans. Because we don't want our children to just be in a class and then they're not learning, but then we also want them to transit from one position or from one level to another. It may not be classroom, it can be transiting from a more easier task to a more complex task. So all I can say is all children can learn.
And we need to give them that opportunity.
Exactly.
All right. Thank you very much, Annette. Mr. Eid Mubarak Msimami, what are your closing
From the
thoughts?
same point, it is a principle in inclusive education that all children can learn and every child needs some form of support in order to learn best. So let us work together with the children, identify the challenges, however small the challenge may be, because you can see something happening and you ignore. Please don't ignore anything. And when you identify these challenges, please, parents should come to KCCA, ask for Eid Mubarak, Inclusive Education Officer, or go to the assessment center, and then you tell us the challenges the child is going through, and then we shall do the assessment and the child will be supported. And our teachers and head teachers, we are saying all children can learn and every child needs some form of support. So make sure these children are supported. For example, like I was saying that UNEB supports children with special needs. They are given transcribers, they are given sign language interpreters, they are given extra time of 45 minutes, and lots of other things, but depending on the assessment. Unfortunately, some teachers out there do not take it as a responsibility to identify the needs of these learners. So at the end of the day, some children are not supported. And for us, we cannot, it is hard for you to tell or to understand the challenges of these children in a class where you don't go to teach. So we have to pick it from the teachers, and then we are able to forward these issues and to support them. So I believe together we can support all children to learn in our country.
When you were speaking, I just thought of a young girl, primary school, pregnant or has just given birth, is breastfeeding a child, has to come to school, anyway, has got the opportunity to come back to school, and is there any consideration for them in schools now?
Yes.
Are teachers equipped to think through giving them the support they need?
The policy gives consideration. For example, if a child gave birth today and tomorrow is examinations, this child is taken as a special needs child, and she will do these examinations under that consideration. One, the 45 extra time is given, and two, she's also given a support personnel to take care of her, who should be a female, of course. So, because sometimes they even have some pain, they are allowed time to relax. Because the only problem is that sometimes we tend to blame these children too much. Yeah. But remember, some of them have just been, we are just raped. Okay? So it was not out of her will. So we must support them. And we are trying our level best to teach the teachers, to inform the teachers. Though some people say, but you know our tradition. Yes, our tradition, fine. Our discipline, yes. But still, what is most important is to look at that particular child, to support her. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you both for taking the time to come and share this information with us. I'm just sad that this stops within the central region and not beyond, because I can imagine actually it might even be more help might be needed in the rural setting than just here in Kampala. But I applaud what you're doing. Thank you for taking the time to share this with us. Annette Pirawa and Eid Mubarak Msimami, thank you. That brings us to the end of our show for tonight. Thank you for watching. Coming up is NTV Weekend Edition.